All right, welcome back to Open Studio with Kristen Jeffers. I'm Kristen Jeffers. I'm so excited to be here with you this afternoon or evening or morning or whatever time it is where you are. But we do go live every Tuesday at 4 o'clock Eastern. Now, if you can't be here right at the beginning or if you come in at the end, note that in every platform that you're watching this in, you can always go back and go back to the beginning. Just know that if if I have a live guest or if there's at some point in time I do contests or share links and stuff, some of that might be time sensitive. Also, if you're watching this after some of the events I will talk about this week are happening, then they probably will have already happened. And there's no guarantee that anything that I'm participating in off of this platform will be uploaded to other platforms. Other than that, anything that's right here in this open studio space is available to you. If you want to go, I know this is on in the YouTube comments and maybe in the LinkedIn as well. But if you're on LinkedIn, you have access to the newsletter. That's kind of the basis of what we're talking about today. And speaking of what we're talking about today, let me go over here and talk about what we're talking about today. I'm going to make me a little, yeah. So, one of the things we're talking about today, which is the title of today, what I led with the title of today's program is How Regionalism Kills, How Regional Prejudices Kill. If you read the newsletter already, you know that that's what this week's newsletter was about. So, I'm going to talk about that for a little bit, but stay tuned. There is another topic I'm going to talk about. I want to highlight one of the other news links I included in this week's newsletter, which is about who is a super token, who's considered a super token, and why should we be designing or hiring for that particular person. One moment here. I'm just going to make sure you can hear me better. I do have my special. All right. Switching to my special microphone there. So once again, if you're just joining live, Kristen Jeffers, this is Open Studio with Kristen Jeffers. It is the companion live stream on Tuesdays at 4 Eastern to the Black Urbanist Weekly, which comes out on all the platforms that it comes out on, several popular email platforms, Substack, Medium, my own website, theblackurbanist.com, LinkedIn, as well as you can subscribe on MailChimp, or you can go over to theblackurbanist.com and there's always a copy there. That's where the newsletter lives. This live stream right now, you should be seeing me live on Twitter. So hello to the Twitter crowd, hello to YouTube watchers, and of course hello to LinkedIn. I know a lot of you all are here on LinkedIn. So this is one of the things we're talking about today, who is a super token and why we should not be hiring or designing really for said person. And then of course the title of today, how can really regionalism and regional prejudices kill? So let's get to that first topic, and of course stay tuned to the end if you want to know more about what I'm going to be doing this week. So taking it back, I took it back this week in the newsletter. I took it all the way back to starting with 2009, which is when I first really started thinking about this. Some of you are aware that there was a blog before the Black Urbanist that touched on some of the same things and it had more of a mixture of everything that I'm interested in. You may not. That blog was called Waxing Philosophical. I started it in the fall of 2007. I have been a blogger in some shape and form since around 2004. Yes, that puts me squarely in the Zanga and LiveJournal era. I actually had a Zanga and something called Diaryland. LiveJournal, I was already busy with my Zanga, so I never really took the time to really get into LiveJournal. But I knew people who had LiveJournal, and they were dead set on LiveJournal. And I know some of those people today are, I know at least one person who was dedicated LiveJournal person is now one of the managing editors of the LA Times. So don't sleep on those of us who started way back then. Also, don't sleep on yourself if you're just getting started, if it's TikTok or Instagram or whatever platform. But the main reason I'm showing you this slide, showing you this imagery today, is that once upon a time, I really just wanted a train. I love my hometown. I knew it was a city. I just felt like, well, why do we only have one train? And that one train you see there, kind of in the foreground, the one that has the star, has NC on it. If and of course, let me just describe this image. It's my blog. It says Waxing Philosophical on the top. There's an image of two Amtrak trains coming into kind of a submerged, sunken station in the ground. It's above. It's technically above ground, but it's kind of below grade. That's what I'm looking for. My more engineering leaning folks in the profession is below grade. So this below grade image, and I use this, and really this is the roots of kind of how my work evolved, because at this point chasing this question made me decide on getting an MPA, then chasing this question in graduate school really in the first semester, and realizing that I was a very unique voice in chasing this question made me decide to go and do the Black Urbanist. And so for a while, I kind of touched around regionalism in this subject, but 2017, kind of in the beginnings of the era that we are living in now, I dropped this post. Let me make it bigger for you. How do you define your city? Does your city define itself in the same way? This is how I get to the line that I said in the block, and as I explained more into this week's email about regionalism killing. Yes, I willingly told y'all that there were times that I might be recycling underwear or just doing a different plan for it, because those of us who are really really into our cities, or at least into the industry, into the professional community development, oftentimes it's not cool to say, well, especially as someone who is not is missing, or I won't say missing, or someone who's not a straight white male or even a straight white female. Like, these are the defaults. Cities are built to those defaults. Redlining was favoring those defaults. Malls are created by those defaults. Shout out to the LA Times, which featured the recent book on mall culture that came out by Alexandria Lang. That's a new book, and that may end up on the list, and I actually may end up writing my own, because I could talk to you about malls. In fact, in this image here that I've shown you of the site, the mall I grew up with, or the mall that's still standing in Greensboro that I grew up with, is pictured here. Next to it is an extremely tall hotel tower for where it is. This, if you go to theblackherbalist.com, if you scroll down on the front page, look for this exact post, click on it. I think I linked to the YouTube screenshot I got here. If not, it's embedded. But the most important thing I want to take away from this particular conversation is that if you don't know exactly what jurisdiction you live in, and especially if you're in my current boat where you can look out the window at one, but your feet are standing in another, if you call 911 and someone comes that you didn't expect, it's the name on the vehicle is not the one you expected it to be. If you go and move into an apartment and you don't have a list of these are your providers, and when you see that list of providers, it's a surprise. That's a good question to ask. If you're purchasing a home, absolutely you need to know who's servicing your home: water, sewer, electric, gas in some cases. If your house is off the grid, and if your house is off the grid, then that doesn't apply to you. But that's also something to consider when we talk about urban and rural and where people should go and what people should do and how to create cultures. What if you want to go off the grid? Does your city allow you to go off the grid? Does your city support your solar dreams? Of course, folks here in DC and Maryland, that's supported, but it's not always supported in other places. In fact, we watched a documentary recently where folks are getting sued to get solar. In fact, that documentary focused on Greensboro and how that is not possible. For solar on private homes in Greensboro is not actually possible, or at least the way, if it is possible right now, it's you have to have a lot of permission from the energy company. I'm not going to mention them, don't want to bring them into this. Just know that the folks that you might think are supposed to be in your corner with your utilities, or you think your kids are going to school. And as I said, regionalism kills because sometimes you don't know who's going to show up and who might shoot you. This is where, and the other piece I really harped on in the newsletter this week is knowing your civic budgets, knowing who's on your local ballot. We're coming up on primary season here, both in DC. DC's is next week, Maryland's is next month, and those people on the low part of the ballot. Not that they're in any lower in position. In fact, you might have more contact with your ANC commissioner, which is a DC specific thing, or your county commissioner if you're in a county operation, or a city council member, or a soil and water supervisor. And that might be you. And shout out to those of you who are watching who are in those positions, my electeds who are throughout the world taking on those positions. And yes, this is not just a distinction in the United States and Canada. This is something that is important no matter where you live. And especially if there has been histories of corruption where you live when it comes to things like your utilities and so-called first responders and emergency services. And of course, yes, absolutely, everything we're asking for with Black Lives Matter. And abolition comes into this as well. Can we provide our own public services? Are the people we want to provide public services adequate? Or are they just there to kill us? Number two, or just, I don't know why I said number two, but just something that just really hit me in this thought is that when we're thinking about, oh, well, and especially those of you who are living in multi-state jurisdictions where the state line is just a street. You could be standing on one side of the street, wave at your neighbors, and they're in a whole other state jurisdiction. And sometimes, and I've seen this, there are countries. And so that's what makes things like border walls wild. That's what makes this recent Supreme Court decision around warrants, like warrantless searches and seizures, just wild. It's just, COVID, as we figured out, doesn't care what boundaries are. COVID does not care that there's a river between us or a bridge or some kind of wall. It's airborne. Whether you want to believe that or not, it's airborne. And yes, it's still here. And that's why you're going to see me still taking precautions. And I want to make it clear, and I always want to make this clear, that I haven't contracted yet. So that's another reason you'll see me take extra precautions in public, or you'll rarely see me unmasked indoors. And if that is the case, it's blink and you'll miss it until we really get this under control. And so COVID is really what brought this back to my attention, thinking about, okay, well, when we were mask mandating and when we were getting access to vaccines and when there was a queue for vaccines and where the hospital was, where were we going, and who would we go to, who would go to us, how will we get there? All those things are so important now in this next phase of where we are with the pandemic, with climate change, with thinking about taking an active role in our communities. And to me, that is the core of urbanism for an individual person. Knowing who says that they're in control of your city, knowing who claims to have jurisdiction over you, and it's literally, jurisdiction is a legal term, it is a legal word, and knowing what you can do, as well as just understanding why certain stores do not locate themselves in certain neighborhoods. I've been doing a lot of market research with Chris Pattern because absolutely I'm tired of driving to craft stores. There would be no Chris Pattern unless I decided to just give it up to Amazon. And so that's another thing when we have this Amazon conversation, thinking about, oh, well, we don't do things with Amazon, but what if that's the only choice? That's, at this point, we are with the individual level, with many of you who are watching who are students, many of you who are watching who are not elected or appointed or even just on a board. There are certain things that we can do individually. There are things we can do to reduce the load. Yes, voting with your feet, not shopping at a place. Economic boycotts still do matter. But we should, as we're doing this urbanism, think about this. So what else got me to thinking about this week is our 2 books of the week. And so I'm gonna actually be putting books of the week on hold for a little bit. We're gonna be digging deeper into the whys of Black Queer Feminist Urbanism. We're gonna go back and do that series again with a little bit more meat. You're gonna get closer to seeing a Black Queer Feminist Index, and you're gonna understand how this conversation, thinking about who shows up, who's supposedly for you, who are you represented by, do they look like you, or do they even care about you? Do they want you to have a pride? Can you even go to pride in your jurisdiction? Can you go to Juneteenth in your jurisdiction? Is the people that are claiming to represent Juneteenth even Black? I think many of us have seen that horrible ad from Little Rock, Arkansas, and please get your people if you're in Little Rock. That's just insane. Let me not say that. That's another thing, working on the language around that. That's just not cool. It's just not cool. That's all I'm going to say about that. Just like that ice cream. Just do your due diligence this month, especially when supporting Black creators, as well as creators of the LGBTQ community. And yes, they overlap. Might be fun to go and actually support a Black and queer creator for Juneteenth. Here's one to support. I've got my links coming up for you later in the webcast. And this is one way you can support me. Buying this book over on Bookshop, look for Kristen Jeffers Media, or go over to, just search me and search the links. The links are in the newsletter. I chose Chocolate Cities. I mentioned that I've been reading Chocolate Cities. I have pushed this books review back weeks, and I'm still working through it. But the one thing I've realized is that DC construction as it was constructed, like I could call DC a super colony. We're going to be talking about super tokens in a moment. DC could be a super colony because it was literally created in a colony on top of a colony. And this book is so rich and it gets into it. And those of you who are right here in the thick of DC's election season, the one that really matters, the fact that it kind of ends early in the year, not to say that independents aren't on the ballot, not to say that we don't have Republicans on the ballot in DC, but we are in an area where so-called liberal politics and the Democratic Party kind of runs things. And so this Democratic primary is going to determine who our next mayor is. And if you want to get context on that, if you want to go deeper than the Barry era, a lot of folks, who are newcomers kind of stop at the Barry era, think that that's like the golden era. There were previous eras. There were previous eras of home rule. There have been struggles even with white folks. And yes, there's a reason why the district's kind of this weird rectangle on the Maryland side of the Potomac. There is a reason that Virginia snatched this part of DC back. It's explained here. It is about slavery. We're not getting around that. Get this book before it's banned from your school. Hopefully you live in the jurisdiction. If you're living here in the DMV, it is here. It is literally about it. It is not going anywhere. It's not going to be banned. So, and then one honorable mention, that book, that comprehensive, this is how the city grew, this is how racism, slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, industrialization, and of course now even COVID, we're starting to see COVID be incorporated in these, this is how this city became the city type books. The tech industry, Silicon Valley, things of that nature. That book exists pretty much for every major city and major region. Now, one way regionalism doesn't kill is when you know what regionalism has been, how it's been set up, how it's been arranged, who your developers are, why your malls are where they are, why your public transit does or doesn't exist, what's taking it so long. And some of you who work directly for the planning firms and for the cities, you know where to find this. You can probably go and spend some time in your archives. But if you want folks that have gone ahead and done that for you, if you're getting ready to matriculate into planning school or start at a particular city, see, and if it's a major city globally, there is a book like this that exists. The one for Kansas City that I've referred to here, all right, there's my, right here. Let me make it a little bigger. Kansas City and How It Grew. I was gifted this book when I walked into Kansas City. And yeah, 1822 is when Kansas City was officially incorporated. It goes a little bit further than that. It does talk about the native tribes that were in that part of Kansas City, and it talks about European colonialism and then how incorporation of the modern day Kansas City happened. And so it covers up till about a decade ago. Not to say things haven't super changed in a decade, but I can tell, you can call me and talk to me about what's changed in a decade, because it's not that much. And I'm not trying to shade, like, I love y'all and you gave me a home for 15 months, but there was, as we all know, there were definitely reasons. And this, it talks about so many different things, everything from growth, industrialization, some of the major things happening in Kansas City. And as I said before, this kind of book exists for every city out there. I have some books on Greensboro. They're first person. There's some folks writing them. I've heard of, there's a really good one. I'm not sure. I'll definitely, not sure what that link is for or about, but I'll definitely come back to that towards the end. But yeah, a book like this exists for every area. And yes, now I see Lauren Garrett has shared on LinkedIn. I'm going to put this up on the screen briefly. This link about childcare deserts. That is another good way to figure out for you, for your family, for where you live, what's available. And likewise, any work that's being done on food deserts. These historical books cover kind of the history of where you got. But if you want to figure out what's happening today, sites like what I just put up on the screen and what are in the comments on LinkedIn, and I did put it up on the screen so everybody could see it on all platforms, as well as just any research you're doing, and anybody who's working for for Gigi Watch and all the different little streets blogs and things, take that time, as I said in the newsletter, If you're not already knee deep in it, and if it's a project you're working on, definitely let us know. Continue to share those projects. I definitely want to amplify them, put them in the newsletter. So I'm gonna move on to our next topic. I could have done a whole newsletter, I could have focused on this on the newsletter, and I may touch on this again in the actual print newsletter next week, since we're going to dig deeper into um, the we're going to dig deeper into these disparities. And this is more for those of us who are in the industry itself and how we're seeing things play out. We are 2 years post the billion dollar pledge around the death of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis police, as well as and that awareness. Not that these things weren't happening. And of course, now as of late, we are in this phase of COVID. We are in this phase of return to work. We're in this phase of mass shooting and mass death and what that's going to look like. And so I wanted to lift up the Fast Company article by Dory Turnstall, and not just this article, because this article is actually going to be part of a book. Stay tuned for a moment. I'm going to put the book cover up there and the date that it's going to come out, so you can put that on your calendar. And yeah, I want to give Lauren again a shout out for doing that deep dive. Please do that deep dive on your regions, but also make sure that you also tell people what you mean by the knowledge. Don't let them hire you in there and you come in there and you're this super token. So what is that? What is Dr. Dory Turnstall telling us about this? And I want to note that she's writing this kind of in a Canadian perspective, but she's worked all over. She's worked in Australia, as she says. She's basically telling us what this super token is. It's somebody who is checking a lot of boxes. That's the way I like to put it. My terminology for this is checking all the boxes, or checking as many boxes. And it's nothing wrong. If you personally check a lot of boxes, great. Definitely be using that for our community. Definitely don't just sit back and say, oh, I can only use this at my job, only use this for my organization. And if you are in a elected, appointed staffing position, definitely do bring that to work. But be mindful that when you are bringing in new people at your job, whatever kind of job it is, whatever kind of organization it is, that you show this article to people. It's on Fast Company. And you know your own talents. Go ahead and write them down, because some people are going to turn you from pet to threat. This is kind of where pet to threat happens. You're identified as a super token. Then people are trying to get you off from what your talent is. And like literally, Dory has made it clear. She's considers herself an adult gifted and neurodiverse everyday genius. She can recognize patterns. She can break down barriers. But as she said, erecting new barriers. She is a doctor. She is Dr. Dory Turnstall. She does have a PhD from Stanford. She has worked in the U.S., she has worked in Australia, and now she is working in Toronto region of Canada. So all over the world. And it's nothing wrong with hiring talented people, but please stop yourself when you think that this is going to be the end, be all, end all. Continue to get folks like me and her and others that are skilled in keeping your organizations going. The work is not done. It was not done in 2020. It was not done in 2021. It is a journey, just like many of our projects are journeys. And honestly, this is work that should continue to be a journey. And some of our tangible work, where it's installing systems, building transportation, building homes, some of that probably that timeline of building needs to shrink a little bit. And some of that can shrink if you actually are pulling in the right kind of folks and giving them what they need. And likewise, if you claim to be a decolonizing organization, then you definitely need to read this. Now, I will say this before I move on to like my next what all I'm getting myself into this week. And let me put myself back up on the screen here. So this article does provide excellent solutions, and in fact, let me drop that article into the comments. Let's see. I am looking at it. I'm also looking at myself on YouTube. A little bit of a tape delay there. So let me go back to my Chrome feed. And all of you all should be able to see this no matter what platform you are on. This is the full link. Read it. You LinkedIn folks, I saw it on LinkedIn, and you've probably been seeing it on LinkedIn, and there's some other folks that have been seeing it on LinkedIn. Your favorite DE&I person or DE&I enthusiast or professional has probably already shared this with you. They are incorporating this. We have been looking for some kind of term to use for a while. And yes, this is where burnout is living for many of us. This is why that we ask, give us this next weekend time to breathe. Please, if you can, shift your office around, or at least give folks a moment to actually think about whether or not Juneteenth is living up to its promise. It by far is not US wide, and of course Texas has been on the map for so many things. So it's like Texas is really going through it right now. And anybody in Texas, I'm sending my heart out to you. You know, you all are doing what you can, but there are, of course, folks around you who are not. And so, yeah, this is the time. Think about where you live. Think about who's around here. The resource that Lauren has shown, and let me put that back on the screen for folks, especially if you are on YouTube and you might not see this link. These are two good articles to immerse yourself in and to get insight on what you need to be doing well. So at this point, and this is I did promise to show this book cover, this beautifully illustrated book cover, which is linked to in the Fast Company article. So if you want to dig more into this super token concept, if you want to be ready to really implement this coming this fall to whomever you are working with, please do make a note of this. Make a note of this article, save it, print it out. If you would consider yourself an ally, be careful about how you introduce this. Likewise, if you are Dory, if you happen to be watching this, like, definitely reach out. Let's definitely have a conversation. I would love to have you on when your book releases, or if anybody who's directly connected with her in the Toronto region, definitely reach out to me. This is definitely a conversation that we have here at Open Studio and in the Black Urbanist Weekly all the time, and of course on all the socials. This is an important conversation. It is not an easy conversation. I know some of y'all little squirmers. Some of y'all already cut off the feed. Some of y'all just peeked in. Oh, she's saying that. I'm gone. But your organizations will be the better for it, because this pool of students coming up, they are those academic geniuses you want, but they also know this generation of youth, other than going through COVID, they don't remember a world before there were pills for undetectable AIDS, unless if they are at the traditional age now. Some of your older students do and may be dealing with that. Some of our students don't remember what it was like to go through these recessions. Like, their parents may have gone through the 08 and 09 recession. Maybe they remember changing homes, but there could have been a cushion. And then some of our students we lost out of regular school or lost out of the feed because they were working. They were the ones delivering. They were on the front lines. They were delivering our packages, our groceries, and all of those things. And they had no choice but to do that. You know, I'm intermittently out here in these store streets doing that, but they had no choice. So let's not forget that. And let's take some of Dory's advice in this article, essay excerpt. Look for your unsung leaders. Look for your teachers, your faith leaders, your art people, like all those folks who may not have the full academic run of things, but your folks on the ground that know things. Don't be afraid of ground folks. Don't be afraid of those tough conversations. Don't be running from a lawsuit. If you really think a lawsuit's going to result from you working with community and paying them and getting through the muck of past beefs and whatnot, that is the work right now. That is where we bring together the geographic regions. That's where we get away from the fact that we have sprawled, that some companies just don't believe that certain markets exist. That's why how we break the market and how we build our communities, our pods, our support system. So now, before you go, there's a couple things that are brand new that have happened to me with this week, and at the tail end I'm going to go through. If you haven't had a chance to watch the whole How to Work With Me, I'm going to do a mini version of that at the tail end. I'm going to be starting to do that at the tail end of every live stream, just in case you're new, or you need a refresher, or you need to understand, or if you want to ask questions around how you can work with me. Yes, the tail end of these live streams is going to become an infomercial for me. But these two other things are times of celebration, other than obviously being at the Capitol Pride Parade with Les and riding in the Jeep. And those of you I saw at Capitol Pride in the Jeep, or if I saw you come off the parade route, or I saw you at the festival, I hope you all had a great time. Let's continue to ask the right questions around our letters and our ethnicities and our incomes and everything. Just companies who want to just be rainbow this month, please continue to stay rainbow. I'm grateful that I've got two companies that I'm going to be having conversations with next month, and I'm going to continue to have conversations. And so I'm going to talk to you about how you can continue to have conversations with me. So this isn't just you do something on the 19th and you drop off. You do something throughout this month and you drop off. You don't end up like Burger King. You don't end up like Walmart. You don't end up like out there dangling in your own way. So what's going on with me this week? I want to first thank the lovely folks at the Yarn Punk Instagram. Vincent Height. He is he does these little amigurumi, like those of you who are in the yarn world, kind of little like stuffed animals, only you crochet them. So he honored me and several other key LGBTQ voices, but not only did he honor me for the work that I'm doing over at Chris Pattern with trying to make clothes sustainably, making all my pride clothes this year. This was just what it's turned into. Literally every finished garment I have made thus far has had rainbows on it, and therefore I wore it to a pride event or another, including the one you see pictured at the top left there. He highlighted this work over here with the Black Urbanist Weekly and here at the live stream. And yes, the live stream is here. A version of it will start to live on Instagram again. It will start to come back to Facebook Watch and Facebook Live. But right now we'll just be YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter tend to be my hotspot, so that's where we'll be. But thank you all, and if you're not already following Chris Pattern, please do. If you want to have a conversation with me about that, this is a good time for me to seg into How to Work With Me. Oh, but before I do that, let me go ahead and put the link to this panel discussion. Y'all know that it's not just me not wanting to go back outside. I do go outside. It is an effort to go outside, but I see some of my good friends, scholars, design professionals that have been going through it. And so those of you who are on YouTube have this link. It says, StreamYard says I get some of my comments or not, but if you want a link to this panel, or you can go over to the Indo Black website and register for this Juneteenth conversation, racial justice and health equity. This is the second time this is going to happen. And by the way, those of you waiting for care and caregiving that we do at Indo Queer, it is coming. I will be here. Les will be here. We will be having our own Pride Month conversation under the Indo Queer banner. But the two of us, along with Janika Reed and of course a moderator, we're going to have this conversation virtual around racial justice and health equity, around the things that we're going through, around the things that are happening to us. Many of you are becoming aware that one way of providing equity is asking yourself, are the health institutions near my home providing everything that they need? Are they being good like people? And actually, one of the things that the reason it's not on the index directly, like my index, is that the original City Lab index talked about healthcare. And I did grow up spoiled with being in the number one city, at least on their measure for healthcare, being in Greensboro, and just things were just, not everything was perfect, but a lot of things were doing well for Black folks that are assigned female at birth. But of course, I can't speak for anybody who is attempting to transition in North Carolina right now. I can't speak for that, but these are things that conversations that need to be had. So come by 7 o'clock this Thursday. Also, I'm excited. There's a podcast episode I'm recording that morning that will come out sooner. There's another podcast episode that's in the queue at some point in time during this year. It will come out. And of course, the SGA cultural displacement panel that is coming up, I will put more information in there about that next week. That'll be in my announcements next week for the live stream. So you all can kind of, if you've seen this part before of the how to work with me, I'm just going to briefly go through how to work with me. If you want the whole thing, if you are on LinkedIn, go over to the How to Work with Kristen Jeffers in 2022 video. It is highlighted. This a version of this these slides, like going forward, is in that packet. The one thing that is different for those of you who just want to tip me today, just stay in here for a few moments longer. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It's not going to be a whole another 30 minutes. I'm just going to breeze through this because my Cash App, Venmo, and Patreon links are there. So if you want to just bless me with a little something one time from watching this, you can do that, and that information will be there. So, but here are the big ways. Like if you're ready to sit down with me and do some big meaty work, or if you want me to shout your name out, just like I advertised other things, I can advertise you in this on this live stream and in the newsletter. So how to work with me, and of course, if you need to know who I am, I'm Kristen, MPA, undergrad in comms, lived in Baltimore, DC, Kansas City, of course my home state and hometown of Greensboro, North Carolina, as well as Raleigh. Went to school there. That picture of me in the little corner is me at Red Emma's, not the second Red Emma's in Baltimore, not the current one, and not the one before the current one, but this is the one on North Avenue. That's where I'm sitting. This was my birthday in 2017. I decided to bring everybody together and do a version of this because I do love talking to y'all. So that's who you're working with. Let me make that real big quickly. Yep. All these different places. I've been at CNUs, UMB Towns, Walk Back Places, CityWorks Expo, state chapter APAs, NACTO. And not only have I been in person, I've also been virtual. Of course, coming up, SGA will be added to that list. My byline is, of course, being in Greater Washington, which I'm working on returning to there soon. I've had bylined in my hometown newspaper rather. I've bylined on my hometown NPR affiliate, as well as the NPR affiliates that I lived in. With the exception, I haven't been on Baltimore NPR yet. So YPR folks, holler at me. I'm here. I'm available. And any members of the press that are watching this, I know I have an email in my email box from someone that's a member of the press. Definitely email me. Note that if you call me and you have a blocked number, please leave a message because I may not pick up immediately. It's probably going to come up as like private number, unknown caller. Just leave me a message and I'll see, or you can DM me, the classic journalism way. DM me on Twitter if you want to get me as a source, and just give me, if you need me within the current 24 hours, might not be the greatest, but if I do catch your work, I definitely am happy to provide expert commentary, be a lead, or anything, or point you to someone that needs to be interviewed for your press story. You can advertise on this platform, this media platform. If you book 4 weeks, it's $75 a week. But I promise you the rates are pretty inexpensive. And actually, I said I was going to be small. So yeah, platform advertising is one way to work with me. You can work with me one-on-one. I can coach you through your career stuff. I can help you get started with a yarn project, which is what I'm doing right here. And as you can see, I am masked. I do come outside. You probably will only see me masked in many situations, but I will come outside masked, come right to you, and teach you what you need to know. Or we can hop on any of these digital platforms that you see me on right now. I absolutely still do this. The one thing, and I do say this in this block, if you zoom it out, and you can on the platforms that it lives on, either I'm masked or you're masked. That's really the only thing. You can absolutely still book me for in person. We just need to make those testing and room provisions because we don't know. And yes, there's multiple rounds. There's long COVID floating around. I know many of you have a different purview on this, but this is my boundary, especially with me having other things going on. So, but I will come outside. But if you are happy with me to just pull up like this, I'll pull up right here in this spot, and I will deliver a version of one of my many classic speeches, or maybe something like this for you. Go over on, when I show the booking page, just book one of those project sheet panels, discussions. I know we're going to have a long relationship. I know we're going to have to negotiate a contract. Yes, you do need to have a budget or a way to getting a budget. I am still doing this on honorarium or better, so please don't come in here and think you're getting at me for free. It's not happening in 2022. And likewise, the project teams, If your project is not in the shape where you can have someone like me who will demand justice and belonging in your project, who will demand a final timeline, who will demand that we actually talk to everybody. Now, I am proud to say that that project of the room I am standing in, the project that I worked on, it is completed. It took a while. It went through some stuff, but it is finished. It's so and likewise, I'm in the process of, but I do not yet have formal DBE certification. If that is a requirement for you, go with a different prime. But if you're willing to work with me, and if your values are beyond what is mandated for diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to these kinds of projects, please let me know. And likewise, some of you have asked about me helping you with media. This comes under the project team's banner as well. We're building like a communication plan. That is a project. You're the project. Your media is the project. So let's book one of those consults in the same way so we can get a sense of what you want to do. And yeah, let me just make this big right here. 250 is my, for those of you who are familiar and want to know directly what the hourly rate is, it is 250 for a lot of these things. Same with the workshops. Now, when it comes to the craft workshops and stuff, I would love to work with community groups to offset my fee. So if you want to bring me to your community group to do like a craft workshop, paying me 250, and then maybe supplies or providing supplies or having like a supply swap, that's another great way to have me. Let me just put that back up here. So yeah, for this particular service, it is a 250 service, but if you want to bring a couple friends until the end of 22, 250 includes you and at least two other friends. Or if you are a community group, if you're a youth organization, let's talk about some kind of trade-off so that, because I want to see more Black and brown youth in the fiber arts. I want to do my part with that. So let's work something out if you need to work on raising money or doing multiple workshops, things of that nature. And one other thing is, for those of you who do craft and you've been to the craft workshops and everything, when you pay me $250, we block out an afternoon, and I make sure that you're pretty good shape. Right now, the main master class is my Chris Fendi scarf. If you want to, you can just buy the pattern straight off for $7.99 everywhere where patterns generally are, Ravelry, PayHip, all those kinds of places. But if you want me to help you finish it, then yeah, when you book me for that $250, that's going to happen. And then finally, let me go to the very end here. So I want to thank you all for being here with me today. This is every Tuesday now. You might have been watching me on Mondays. It might have popped up for you on Mondays. Giving myself a little more space to think and feel and do things. It gave me time to do some more formal slides, put my thoughts together, so that way these don't go any longer than an hour. My goal is not to be more than an hour when I do these. So if you want to reach out to me, member of the press, or anybody, you can email me. Go to Calendly, not just on Calendly, but you can also go to my given name, KristenEJeffers.com. Click on work with me, and all the Calendlies are embedded. So whatever you want to try to work with me with, you can actually sync with my calendar, and we can get on the calendar together. I will ask, if you're watching this within 24 hours of this tape, like literally right now, until about, I would say, Friday morning, let's hold off on bookings. You can book with me, but I may move that booking because I do have some appointments that aren't showing up yet. If you just want to tip me, that's why I made it big again. And I'm going to leave this up. I'm going to throw some music up, and we're going to outro to this. You can Venmo me, Kristen Jeffers I. I look just like I did on that Endo Black, or like kind of like this, where my hair is big and poofy here. My Cash App, KJeffers2. It should also be an image of me, but if you're not quite sure, just message me on there and I'll verify, yeah, that's me. Likewise, patreon.com/Kristen E. Jeffers if you want to make a monthly pledge of any amount, starting at $5 and above. And then PayPal, I'm Kristen Jeffers. You can also verify that it's me, and you're sending it to the right one. If you want to send a PayPal and you're not quite sure, let me know, and I can just send you the information. So I hope to see you again in a week. Feel free to share this, subscribe to the newsletter, share this video. LinkedIn, folks, is all embedded. Those of you on YouTube, link is in the bio. And Twitter, folks, you just go to my profile page, and other than the things that I've retweeted, anything that I've sent out is me. So have a wonderful week, as we can. We're still going through things. Thank you all for being here, and I'm going to step off now and take us out with this page and a little bit of music. Until next time.